Welcome to the American Business Podcast. I'm Kevin Deveci, your host. I'm welcoming you to episode 108. Today is December 5th, 2025. And today we are streaming from Houston, Texas, the energy capital of the nation. And today's number is 200 billion. This is the expected ERP software market size globally by 2033. And for your information, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. That's the business software system, a platform that companies are using to streamline their operations. Speaking of ERP and business software, we have a great guest today. I'm going to invite our guest to our virtual stage and I'll get the conversation started. I'm very excited. Let's do this and let's get started. All right, great. Welcome, Greg. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to be here.
Thank you very much. Happy Friday. I hope you are having a nice week. How is your week going so far?
It's been a busy week. I don't know about you. Once a year, we have a all hands company calls for 3 days straight here at Cherry Beckert. So 4.5 hours of all 3,000 of us on a webinar for 4.5 hours, 3 days. It's a lot of content, but we just wrapped that up.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you are with us today. I'm very excited to talk about ERP industry and business software. You have decades of experience, and we have a lot to learn from you today and learn from your professional insights. As a start, would you please introduce yourself and your organization to our viewers and to our listeners?
Absolutely. So my name is Greg Kopp, and I lead the Microsoft Business Central practice here at Cherry Beckert. Our brand is Archer Point by Cherry Beckert, and we are the largest by headcount Business Central partner in North America. And then Business Central, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is one of Microsoft's ERP products. And so Microsoft is the largest actually in the mid-market ERP space, even though most people don't know it because they don't market it separately. But Microsoft in the early 2000s had acquired Navision, Exapta, Great Plains, and Solomon. And so Business Central is the kind of the future forward for what was originally the Navision product line. It's also now the product direction for where anyone running Great Plains is headed. So, and then it's kind of exciting. So NetSuite, which is a major competitor in the mid-market space, Business Central has more clients in the cloud than NetSuite does in the cloud. And they had a significant head start going all the way back to the NetLedger days. So I think Microsoft is now, well over 40,000, I think in the 45 to 50,000 range of clients in the cloud on Business Central SaaS. So.
Yeah, these are important numbers and shows the size and depth of Microsoft Business Central. Thank you for sharing this with us. Would you please tell us about your career journey a little bit? How did you get started? How your career journey has unfolded over the years?
Well, I started out my career in public accounting with Arthur Andersen, and I'm sure there are fewer and fewer people graduating with accounting degrees today who even know who Arthur Andersen was. Although when I graduated, it was the Big Six, and that was a great job to land. So I never thought I'd find my way back to public accounting. I had, done my obligatory tour in public accounting, moved on to finance roles at clients, and then eventually decided to switch careers and move into ERP software implementation. So I've been doing that since the late 90s. And, the company I helped found in 2002, Archer Point, we were focused on Navision, now Business Central. Grew that business to 175 people spread across US, Canada, India, and Mexico. And then last year, we had also turned ourselves into employee-owned. So we were 100% ESOP, and then we sold to Cherry Beckert in October of last year. So now we are Archer Point by Cherry Beckert.
When you think about your day-to-day work, what are the exciting and challenging parts of your work on daily basis?
Well, I'd say this year has been particularly challenging because one of my key leaders has been out on medical leave since late June. So obviously our expectation is that person is coming back. So it's harder in some ways than when somebody leaves, because then obviously, as tough as that may be, you get to work on replacing that person. Well, since our hope has been all along that this person is coming back, well, what I've done is my best job to try to keep the seat warm while that person's out, doing both my job and that person's. So I'd say the last 6 months have been particularly challenging, because I would say it's, how do you do two people's jobs when you don't have any more time in the day? And I would argue you do neither job extremely well, but it's been in some ways liberating because it allows you to figure out what's really important. So my strategic uh, directive here this last 6 months has been, I'm going to do some things strategically poorly to figure out how important they actually are. And then if too many people complain that I'm doing a terrible job, well, that must be important. And then my goal has been, how do I automate it? How do I improve it? And oftentimes what I find is there's tremendous opportunity for process improvement, and that's been part of my journey the last 6 months. So I would almost argue I kind of like this idea in the future. How do I put some pressure on the system that kind of forces us to re-examine how we do certain things? And having somebody out obviously puts pressure on the system, so you figure out what's truly important.
How do you see the state of ERP industry? So I mentioned earlier in the podcast, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. But if you like to, expand on it, you are more than
Yeah.
welcome. And if you can also tell us about the industry, how the ERP software industry is doing in general, any challenges, any updates that you can share with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a weird time, with the rise of AI. No one is exactly sure what this all is going to look like. So I'd say one of the big question marks is, what does ERP look like going forward as we integrate more and more AI into the mix? There are some pundits that say ERP is going to go away, everything's going to be agentic AI. I would tell you, I've thought a lot about that, and I don't see that happening. That feels more like marketing hype than reality. But I do think one of the things we're seeing with ERP is more and more automation, more and more leveraging of agentic AI, whether that's true agentic AI solutions or just leveraging AI productivity tools. But I, I would say over the course of the next probably 12 to 24 months, we're going to see kind of how much of this current AI hype becomes reality. And I would argue, I don't, the big question that my own staff and I have clients asking is, does this mean people's jobs are going away? But what I've seen so far in the ways we forget the marketing hype, but how can we use AI today? What
Mhm.
I've seen is it's an incredible productivity enhancer. It improves output, and we can use it to improve quality. I haven't seen yet that it actually helps or that it would eliminate jobs. Because think about, we said the same thing of email. That was going to eliminate all kinds of jobs. Well, what we ended up with, I don't know about your inbox, Kevin,
Mhm.
but I'm buried. So, these things which were going to eliminate our jobs only seem to make life in some ways harder and more complicated. The volume of information we have to consume. I don't think AI is going to be any different. The amount of AI slop we see getting produced is incredible. In fact, my big argument with a lot of people I talk to, like, oh yeah, I'm using AI to summarize every meeting and do my to-dos, and you know now I see fewer and fewer people actually show up live to meetings, because why do I need to show up live? AI is going to do everything for me. I'm like, oh. Okay. I, how often do people actually go back and read those summaries, read the transcripts, do anything with all this AI generated stuff? I don't think a lot, but yet we're getting inundated with more and more information. So I don't know. I think we got lot of opportunity ahead of us. I don't think anybody's job is going to get eliminated anytime soon.
Well, yes, I love the way you look at it and explain, especially with the meeting notes. This is pretty cool. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, we get all these notes. Like how often people really go back and read it
Yeah.
is a
Well,
good question mark.
and the
It's
thing
good
that cracks me
archiving
up
for
too
sure.
is
Yes.
I feel like any meeting that I don't need to show up to, that I'm relying on AI to generate the notes, the summaries to do, I probably shouldn't have been invited to that meeting because what that means is I have nothing to contribute. So, my big push is okay, wait a minute. Any meeting you don't feel like you should show up to or don't need to show up to, get it off your calendar. It's a waste of your time. But I think a lot of what we're getting with AI right now is I'd call it accelerated FOMO. So, it only allows us to buy into our fear of missing out at scale. So
Mhm,
now I'm going to have all kinds of things I need to go back and review, which I wasn't going to show up and contribute in the first place. So probably shouldn't have shown up. But yeah,
mhm,
I don't think anybody's job's going away anytime soon.
mhm, mhm. Yes, yes. How do you see the adaptation of AI in the market in general, especially in small and mid-sized business market, based on your observation?
So I've been talking a lot with our clients as well as IT business leaders, and I'd say that if I'm talking to peers who are also working in IT, it's a different conversation than when I'm talking to clients. So first, if I kind of take the conversations I have with leaders at firms like ours, it's constantly, oh yeah, we need to figure out this agentic AI stuff. We need to hire people who know AI. But my question for them has been to do what exactly? And the answer I get back pretty consistently is, well, AI stuff. I'm like, okay, it kind of sounds like we want to hire somebody that knows how to use a hammer. And then when we get them on board, they're going to say, hey, what do you want us to hammer? And we're going to like, I don't know, just start hammering. Um, so I feel like, as I'm talking to other IT leaders, we're skipping ahead to agentic AI when we're barely AI literate. So the conversations I've been having a lot is how do we get literacy before agency? And then that also is translated into conversations I've had with clients because repeatedly the conversations I have is, I'm using AI personally. I use it to help my kids with homework. I use it to do meal prep. Okay, I use it to do travel planning or vacation planning. I'm like, okay, but how are you using it in your business? Well, other than email summaries or helping me with a presentation or respond to an RFP, there's not a lot of what I'd call transformational usage of AI. So then the other thing I've been trying to talk with clients about is, okay, how do I help you build literacy before agency? The problem right now is everybody's out looking for problems that require an AI solution. What I've seen so far is there's almost no problem I have that actually requires an AI solution. However, AI has been incredibly helpful in helping me figure out a solution, which is often other existing technology that I just didn't think to deploy or implement, or it's a simple process change. So that's been the key in coming back to clients and going, okay, let's build literacy before we try to go find agentic solutions. And then let's start small with personal challenges. And by personal, I still mean within an organizational context. So what are things that frustrate you today? They're manual. They could be done better, but you haven't bothered to try to improve it. So let's start with that before we try to go solve big organizational issues, which typically involve more stakeholders, get complicated. So that's been my big push with clients. Literacy before agency. Let's start with personal transformation before organizational. And then repeatedly, I get the ahas. Oh, yeah. There's this thing I do where I copy data from one place to another, or I manually enter data from one spreadsheet to another. Yes, let's go figure out how we use LLMs, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or Copilot, to help you think about your problem, help you think about solutions, And then I'm going to probably guarantee you it's not going to be an agent. It's going to be something in Power Automate, or it's going to be, a dynamic intake form, or something simple that you could actually go build yourself.
Well, maybe we can dive a little deeper on these, especially in terms of deploying business software systems, ERPs and other systems, for example. Um, Based on your experience, because you have decades of experience, what is the best way for companies to figure out their need professionally or organizationally, I must say, and how they should start transforming their operations and businesses by utilizing business software systems?
Yeah, I'd say for every company, there's got to be something compelling, because no one chooses to implement ERP software because they're bored or they have extra time on their hands. Implementing business systems is complicated. It takes time, and it's often more money than anyone wants to spend. So the things that I find typically compel people to make a shift are they're growing, and their current systems or processes are limiting their ability to grow. And typically, the easy way to identify that is they're adding headcount as quickly as they're growing their top line. Well, typically, well, and obviously, we know if the processes are manual, if it requires headcount that scales, as kind of in proportion with your revenue, well, at some point, your processes start to fall apart because the processes just can't handle the volume or the scale or the communication complexity. So that's typically where companies will come talk to us. They've outgrown QuickBooks, they've outgrown Excel spreadsheets. They just can't scale. So there's that. And then I'd say the other thing we find a lot of is there are a lot of cloud-based platforms out there who shall remain nameless, but you can guess who they are, where the publisher will try to kind of get people in with a super low price on an initial subscription, and then they'll jack up the price on renewal. Thankfully, Microsoft doesn't do that. But that's another place where we find people compelled to move because what they had budgeted for their business systems made sense with the initial discount they got. And then when they get hit with egregious price increases on renewal, they just realize that the business can't sustain this increased cost. So thankfully, that's why we continue to work with Microsoft, because they don't do that. I mean, they're in it for the long game. They're never, kind of doing these bait and switch things that we see a lot of other companies do.
When you look at the small and mid-sized market, mm, what are the best leadership examples that you can share with us? It is because when you are deploying these systems, it requires a lot of leadership. It actually comes down to old school change management, really, because you try to bring up the modern systems into the company, and naturally there's going to be a resistance to change. And how business leaders are navigating around these challenges based on your observation.
Well, I know, Kevin, you said on this podcast you like to talk about books. So I would say the best book I have ever come across, and this I recommend pretty much to every small to mid-sized business leader I talk to, is the book called Traction by Gino Wickman. I would say that book was transformational for us. We originally read that book back in 2012. And one of the quotes, now I know it typically gets attributed to to Ford, but I think maybe it even goes back to an ancient Chinese proverb. But it's this idea that vision without execution is hallucination. So I realized we were doing a lot of hallucination. And what that typically looked like in practice is every time we'd have a quarterly meeting, annual meeting, we'd have all these great ideas. We'd come back the next quarter or next year and go, great, how did we do? And people are like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So we had a lot of great ideas, but I would say our accountability was weak, our execution was weak. So one of the things that traction taught me is if we wanted to grow and we wanted to scale, we had to think about it differently. We had to think about it from a systems perspective. And actually, what traction talks about is what they call the entrepreneurial operating system. So every business has to have an operating system. Now there are others in addition to traction. There's Gazelles by Vern Harnish, any number of ones, but I'd say we settled on traction, and that helped us get clear about what traction calls the 8 values shared by all, or I'm sorry, the 8 questions shared by all, starting with what's your core values, your core focus, your 10-year target, your 10-year vision, 3-year target, 1-year plan, your quarterly goals down to issues. And so it was incredible, just in helping us get the entire organization aligned. And I'd say the other thing that helped a ton is years ago, Microsoft commissioned a study by IDC that talked about what they called the profit valley for a professional services firm between 25 people to 50 people. Talking to a number of other leaders, I now understand, whether it's IT, legal, you name it, everybody understands this concept of between 25 to 50 people. It's either the profit valley, or some other industries call it the killing fields. It's really hard for professional services firms to grow organically through that barrier. And that's why we see a lot of firms do what I call porpoise, where they'll, go up above 50 and then crash, and up and down. So anyone who is facing that profit valley, killing fields, trying to grow the business, traction is where they should start.
That's a great insight. Truly appreciate it. Well, in your career journey, have you had any role models, any mentors who helped you shape your career perspective over the years?
I would say who I look to as my models are what I would call my string of terrible bosses. So I know a lot of times people look to someone who was a great example as their role model. Mine was a series of terrible models who I swore I was going to do everything the opposite of them. So,
Makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, and thankfully, as we started Archer Point, I was young and energetic enough to set out to try to prove that I could build a business as the opposite example of what I'd seen before. And thankfully, it worked out pretty well. Thankfully, my models were so poor and so opposite of what a good business should be. Now, the sad thing is my prior leaders operated exactly like most of our industry operated. So it wasn't that they were outliers in our industry. They were pretty much the norm. But, so one great example is the bosses I worked for would always say, sell it and we'll figure out how to implement it later. I was like, okay, but if I don't know how we're going to implement it before I sell it, how am I magically going to have this answer after we sell it? And their constant refrain would be, doesn't matter, sell it. I was like, no, this seems like a terrible idea. And it was, because it was one customer service nightmare after another. The other would be I'd say, hey, I don't know how I'm going to staff it. And they'd go, sell it and we'll just get contractors to come in and do it. I'm like, okay, I have never discovered this magical contractor tree where, the best people are just sitting out, hanging out, waiting for me to call them. I said, if I don't know how to staff it internally, the contractors who have time are probably not the contractors I want. But again, that was the constant refrain. Well, then what most businesses in IT did and continue to do is they would constantly shift people from a project they'd already sold to the new project. And it was, again, one constant customer service nightmare after another. So I kind of swore for our business when we started it, we're never going to sell something we don't know how to implement. We're never going to sell something we don't know how to staff with the people we have. And honestly, that served us really well. So,
In your view, how a good leader should be? What are the good qualities or qualities a good leader should have?
yeah. Um, so I've asked myself this question a lot over the course of the last few years. In fact, in 2019, right before COVID, I decided I wanted to go back for my MBA. And I had to try to explain to my wife why I was doing it because she goes, "So you're not looking to change jobs? Nope. You're not going to get a promotion out of this? Nope. Just I want to accomplish a couple things. One is I want to kind of re-energize my learning. I feel a little stale. I feel like this will be a good way to kind of help me accelerate. What's new, what's different, what's changed. And I said the other thing that will help me is I want to understand, can I lead in a context where I don't have any positional authority? And as you know, in an MBA program, everything's a group project. Nobody can claim a title as the reason why somebody has to do what they say. And so it was a great opportunity for me to kind of lean into what I think it's John Maxwell has in his 5 levels of leadership. If you're counting on title or positional authority as the way you lead, that's the least effective. And so it gave me a great opportunity to practice leading in a context where people have to want to follow if you're going to be a true leader. You only get to force people to do something maybe one time. And then after that, they will typically nod their head and say they agree with you, but then go do whatever they really think needs to be done. So I would say the key thing for me, I think, about good leadership is lead by example, be clear. And then I think, too, for people who work in a large organizational context like I do now, is don't wait for permission. So what I've learned a lot, uh, which has served me well, is communicate. So I'd say don't communicate what you're doing, but as a leader, leaders don't sit around waiting for permission to do things. Leaders make a difference. And so obviously, if somebody tells them not to do something, I'm not going to do that. But I will communicate, here's where I'm headed, here's what I'm doing. Tell me to stop if you don't want to see me do this, but I'm going to keep making a difference and make a change. Um, so that's what I would say.
What is your career advice for the next generation professionals coming into the job market nowadays?
I would say, especially for those who think about wanting to start a business, the biggest thing that prevents people from starting anything, whether it's a business, starting a career, changing careers, I think is fear. And so if you recognize that most of the obstacles are internal, well, those I can control. Where when most people externalize all their obstacles, they think, oh well, I can't do this until I get money or investment or I get time or well, unfortunately, externalized obstacles you don't have a lot of influence over. But if you realize most of the things that prevent you from accomplishing whatever it is you want to do are internal obstacles, well, then the sky's the limit. So I would say, going back to when we started Archer Point, um, we just found out my wife was pregnant. I had no money. Now, thankfully, I was young enough not to realize everything I should be fearful of. So cash advanced the credit cards, took out the home equity loan, made my capital investment to start the company, and then you know hit it hard. So I would say for most people, just don't externalize all your obstacles. Realize there are plenty of people out there every day with the same resources you have, making life-changing decisions, building businesses, launching new enterprises. So figure out how to do what you want to do to take that first step with what you got.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us in your busy schedule. Thank you for sharing your professional insights with us and your professional wisdom. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been fun.
Yes, pleasure is all mine, and I wish you a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. Well, to our audience and to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Well, we had another informative episode today with Greg Kaup. And as you know, in each the American Business Podcast episode, we bring you informative content because there is something new to learn. And within this view, it's important to have experts on the American Business Podcast. And that's what we do. We bring you experts, we bring you leaders, and we can learn from them and from their experience. If you'd like to be a guest in the American Business Podcast, please send us an email, americanbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. We also welcome your feedback, who you would like to see in the American Business Podcast episodes. You can also send us an email, americanbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to advertise, sponsor the American Business Podcast, please also send us an email, americanbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. I am also inviting you to our website, americanpodcast.tv. We update our website weekly basis. You can see coming episodes, scheduled episodes, our guests, as well as subjects we will cover in each American Business Podcast episode. As you know, American Business Podcast is a YouTube Silver Award-winning podcast. We are in top 1% in YouTube business category. We are growing fast, and I truly appreciate your support. If you haven't done so, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. This is the QR code to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe, and if you are feeling more generous, you can also leave your comments in the chat box in YouTube. Truly help us, and we truly appreciate your support. As you know, every month we put together online business networking event called Connection America Business Alliance networking event, and we stream live on the American Business Podcast. Next one for this month, that's a monthly event. This month we schedule it for December 19th, and it'll start at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time Zone, and you can scan this QR code and you can sign up. We have a limited seating. The special event will be networking live. At the same time, you'll be on the American Business Podcast, so you'll be in front of thousands of American Business Podcast viewers and listeners. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you to our registration page and you can sign up. I hope you can join us as a special online business networking event for you to introduce yourself, your company, your products, your promotions before the new year. That's a great opportunity for talking about your business, promoting your business, your products and services. I hope you join us. You can join us. Anywhere apps. Well, if you are in business, if you are in small and mid-sized business segment, consider Anywhere apps. Anywhere apps specialize in businesses in small and mid-sized market, specialize in CRM, contract management, facility management, workflow automation, as well as document management operations. And also the systems Anywhere apps designed are easy to use, quick to deploy, and it's scalable. I have the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to their website. And if you're interested, make sure to contact them and make sure to tell them the American Business Podcast send you to the Anywhere apps company and products and services. You'll like this company, that's for sure. Anywhere apps, anywhereapps.com is their website. If you'd like to learn about Excel and other Microsoft software systems, consider Ms. Excel. Ms. Excel has a fun and engaging way of teaching business software. I have the QR code on the screen. When you scan the QR code, you'll see Ms. Excel's teaching calendar as well as the catalog. You can pick the courses that you like. Before you check out, make sure to use the discount code coming from the American Business Podcast. It is ABP 2025 for 25% discount while you are check out on their website. Lead to lead. That is the conference for leadership. It is scheduled for January 23rd, 2026. The leadership guru Joseph Beauchamp will be leading and running this conference. You'll love the insights you'll get from Joe Beauchamp and Beauchamp team. I have the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to their website and learn more about the conference, Live to Lead, and you can also sign up. I'm also planning to be there, and if you go, we can also meet in person. Well, as you know, I have another podcast called Two Guys All Things Tech with our co-host Anthony Lucidi. So both of us as co-hosts, we debate about different subjects. We just completed our series about AI and AI regulation, and we are getting ready for new episodes. If you're interested in technology, AI, and other technological subjects, consider Two Guys All Things Tech podcast. I have the QR code on the screen. It's a different setup. We talk more and we share more of our views and insights and debate from different points of view. I have the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to the YouTube channel of Two Guys All Things Tech, and you can subscribe and you can watch our current and coming episodes in the podcast. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening to the American Business Podcast. The American Business Podcast is the voice of American business. Thank you, and have a great weekend.